You've heard his voice, but have you really heard from him? Well, now you're gonna. This week, tournament director from the Bassmaster Opens, Chris Bowes, on...
I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome back, one. Welcome back, all. Hard to believe it is the last week in October. Where does the time go? Well, let's not waste any more time, and let's jump right into it. This week, and on this podcast, week after week, really my goal is to try and give you guys a different side of somebody that you may have seen, or different interviews that you don't get to see. And this is a guy you see a lot of, but you don't get to hear a lot about himself personally. He does an amazing job. The amount of anglers that he deals with on a weekly basis is insane. And this is, you wonder how I come up with these guests. Well, thank you guys for being the program director of this particular program, because a bunch of you guys have said, hey, why not have Chris on? And that's exactly what we're going to do. So this week, I guess it's MC and the emcee, because I'm being joined by Bassmaster Opens tournament director and Bassmaster Opens MC, the one and only Chris Bowes. Chris Bowes, the man behind the voice. I mean, you have the job. I mean, a lot of times people will say, I'm the MC of Bass, but I'm going to tell you the hardest working MC of Bass is right there. I mean, if the thought of what you do every week at the Opens makes me want to lay in the fetal position. How many people were the most amount of anglers you've MC'd this past season?
This past season, I'm sure. I know at Kissimmee, at Harris Chain, the opening event was probably our fullest field. We had, full field of pros and co-anglers, so 450 anglers. There weren't too many zeros. I think it was about 418, something like that.
You're a sick man. How do you? I mean, people wonder how I stay as jacked up as I do through 100 elites. I mean, 100 elites is a walk in the park compared to what you do. But you don't just do that. I mean, you're tournament director. You're running the whole thing. So really, it's just dawning on me that I probably shouldn't be interviewing you, because maybe this is going to be a telltale sign to our bosses that I don't work as hard as I do.
No, not at all, Dave. You do a fantastic job, and I appreciate, the job you do. And I don't even hold myself in the same regards as you and some of the other greats that have come through. When I started 18 years ago, Fishburne was the MC. I mean, so I've seen a few come and go, and I think you do a fantastic job. I wouldn't want to trade spots with you at all. I mean, you're the voice of Bass. I just try to have fun, and hopefully the anglers have fun with it as well. And I know in my mind that these anglers, a lot of them, they're fishing the biggest tournament of their life when they're on that Bass Open stage. And I want to treat them with the respect and give them the platform. It's been a little odd the last year and a half, 2 years with COVID, because we've changed some of our interview, processes and things like that, really kind of just paring it down to only interviewing on Saturday on stage. Hopefully, I actually started to bring some of that back in Oneida, and then we had this little uptick again. So I kind of backed off. I said, we've had a really successful 2021 season. We had just the one cancellation, which was not COVID related. It was just strictly because of the flooding at Smith Lake. I said, let's not push our luck. Let's go back. And we went back to kind of restricting interviews and things. So that's made the weigh-ins flow a lot smoother, actually, or a lot expedited them. So we don't have quite the buildups and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just try to make the anglers feel like the experience, it's a positive experience for them. I want to come back more and more.
I mean, I've talked about it on a bunch of podcasts, and I know anglers have talked about it, but finally I'm talking to the person that had to deal with it on a podcast. How much of a nightmare, and I know everybody has had their COVID stuff to deal with, but I could only imagine planning events and running events during this time. It must have been unforeseen territory. You know what I mean? Even for someone like yourself that's been doing it for as long as you have.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly used to, I've had hurricanes impact events over the years where we've had to cancel. Before my time, we had things like 9/11, which were, obviously a very unfortunate situation. And Bass, in my opinion, did the right thing and just kind of suspended events because they were literally in the middle of an event at Thousand Islands when that happened. So there's been kind of those one-off situations where you got to prepare. But when you just have, half a dozen events basically canceled, boom, boom, boom. It's got challenges, but, we have a great group at Bass. And everybody, every department, from the media folks trying to get the messaging out there, to certainly folks like Eric Lopez, who very well, from an event standpoint, everyone just kind of rallies. And we're fortunate we have a lot of experience at the company right now. So everybody just kind of rallies and makes it happen. And, it's kind of weird because I was looking at, I was talking earlier with you about registration for the 2022 Opens just right around the corner. And basically about 5 days, a week from today, actually, we'll start our early entries for our anglers that had success last year. And then a week later, we'll open it up to Bass members and Bass Life members and Bass Nation members. But I was kind of thinking about it today, and I'm like, last year, we were still running events all the way up. Gosh, it seemed like almost to Christmas time. And then we turn around, we got to do the registration. So we really haven't had an off season for 2 years, in my opinion.
No. I mean, it was back-to-back seasons. I mean, the first season got pushed back, and then even this season, I'm sure the Opens was similar to the Elites, where it almost everything got pushed forward just in case things had to. Was that the same with the Opens? I know in the Elites,
we're always trying to plan for that. We're the Opens are typically a little bit backloaded into the fall. Because of scheduling. I mean, we have a lot of events. Certainly the elite events, are a little bit more spring, early summer loaded. And we want our anglers to have the ability to, especially our elite anglers, they're our premier customer. We want them to have the ability to fish not only the Bassmaster Elite Series, but fish the Opens. So we try to schedule them accordingly so that there's that opportunity. So we typically are a little bit more backloaded, but I mean, just push. Last year we had take an already backloaded schedule with the Opens and push a lot of those spring events in between those. And I mean, it just was one right after the other. It was crazy, but again, just fortunate, to have a great staff and great group of folks at Bass that make it happen. They just have a whatever it takes mentality.
It's a great team, and it's a great team to be part of. And I always use the analogy. I mean, my job, it literally is a dream. It's the job I dreamed of when I was a little kid. What's your history? Was Bass something growing up that you were like, man, I want to work with them, or I want to, that's going to be part of me? Or was it just somehow Chris Bowes ended up at Bass?
So I've always had a passion for the outdoors. I was from the time I was a small child, I was carrying a fishing rod. I got a lot of pictures around here, me with the shorty shorts from the 70s on, carrying a fishing pole. And
you need to bring those back, by the way. Yeah, I think you're the guy who could bring them back.
It always been a passion, not only fishing, but I was a big duck hunter back in the day, and I love trapping. I actually, as I got older, I was working at a restaurant, Ground Round. Some of you from up in the Northeast are probably familiar with that chain. And I'd actually take a 3 months leave of absence to just trap full time in the fall. Did that for a couple of years. And then in the 80s, the market fell flat on its face and really has never come back. So I decided, well, this is probably not a good career path. So I went to college, SUNY Cobleskill, and got a degree in fisheries and wildlife management from SUNY Cobleskill. Got out and had these great visions of moving to Montana and do creel studies and things like that, which is really a typical entry level position for someone coming out of school with a fisheries and wildlife management degree. But I met my wife, and she wasn't really too keen on living in a cabin and getting $100 bill a week, which is basically what a lot of those jobs are.
Yeah.
So I kind of piddled a little bit with a nuisance wildlife business for several years, where I basically would remove animals, kind of parlayed that trapping experience into something that was a little bit more profitable since the fur market had really crashed so bad. So
Yeah.
I did that for a couple of years, and then I started having kids and got really hard. It was like kind of a 24/7 thing. And eventually I ended up getting a job doing purchasing for Carrier Corporation, the air conditioner. So now I take a complete left turn and go into the manufacturing business, and was buying parts. And I met a gentleman along the way, Dick Sessions, great friend. Unfortunately, he passed several years ago, and I knew about a club called Salt City Bassmasters. It was in Syracuse, New York, and they have pretty good history with bass. And if y'all know Barbell, you have probably a lot of people watching this podcast are familiar with Barb. She's a Salt City member. I got involved with them in the early mid 90s, and started fishing. My boys were getting a little bit older, where I wasn't leaving 2 babies with my wife, so I could go out and kind of dabble on Saturdays and Sundays tournament fishing. I had moderate success. I certainly was not close to being an elite angler, or even probably an opens angler, but I had some moderate success. And I think maybe Mike Casano, who was the club president at the time, who later went on to be the New York State Bass Nation president, he asked me, they still to this day, and back then even, it's always hard to find good officers for some reason. People really like to complain about stuff, but they don't really like to get involved and change it. So he saw an opportunity. He said, we think you'd be a really good fit to be the tournament director for Salt City, which seems like a small thing, but this club was one of the I think it was at the time the second biggest in the country. We had 80 members. We had to cap it at 80 and we had a huge waiting list because, when you start to get more than 80 people in a club, it really starts to be a lot of work,
Yeah.
And so just in the interest of being able to really take care and service the members that we had, we capped it, and things were really going well. We had, the club was growing, everything was really good. And then Bass and Chuck Harbin, who decided to show up for the first time ever in Syracuse, New York, on Oneida Lake with an open. And Mike Casano was, of course, a lot of times they'll contact a local president for volunteers.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. So they contacted Mike Casano and said, you're the president of Salt City. We know you're a big club. We're hoping you can have some volunteers, and we want you to be the volunteer coordinator. And he said, I'd love to. He said, but unfortunately, I'm fishing the event. I can't be the volunteer coordinator and be fishing the event. So he reached out to me, and I took that role as a volunteer coordinator, worked with Chuck. And back in that day, Pooley was there. You probably remember Pooley, and a lot of the old timers, and things went really well. Art Ferguson, I believe, won the event. It was shortened to 2 days because, believe it or not, the weather on a night, the weather can get nasty from time to time. They had the first day, we had a few boats that had some issues and even I think it was the town of Cleveland, which is on the north shore of the lake. They had gotten a new boat, like an airboat type thing, to rescue. It was mainly to be used for ice rescues because obviously Oneida, and you're from up north, Oneida is a very, very popular ice fishing destination. Well, in their great wisdom, and I'm sorry, hopefully none of them are listening or see this podcast. They decided to take this airboat, which was really an inflatable airboat, out to do a boat rescue in 6-foot waves, and that didn't really end so well. So it was kind of an interesting event weather-wise. I guess maybe I should have realized at that point what I was going to get into in the future. But anyhow, we closed the books on that event. It goes well. Art wins. About a year later, I guess. I'm active in the New York State Bass Nation. I'm active in the club, so I'm perusing the message boards and things like that. And Wayne Tomasi, who was the New York Bass Nation president at that time, posted a post that Bass was hiring a tournament director. Well, I'm working at Carrier, and people in Syracuse probably know that, Carrier has phased out probably 4,000 or 5,000 jobs out of that facility. It went from being a huge manufacturing facility to basically just an R&D facility. And my job, because I was really heavily involved with equipment, purchasing motors and things like that for the equipment, I kind of saw writing on the wall that, this is probably going to go away soon. And so I said, what the heck, let's give it a shot. I got a fisheries wildlife degree. I know Chuck Harbin, you know, I worked with some of the people there. I sent in my resume. Next thing you know, of course, we were owned by ESPN at the time. Next thing I know, I'm flying down to Montgomery. Bass was in Montgomery at the time, and I'm interviewing with the one and only Trip Weldon and Bruce Mathis, who was the event director. They interviewed me, and I guess about a week later, they offered me the job.
Well, what was an interview with Trip like? Because I mean, I worked with Trip for a long time, but I can only imagine how he didn't actually interview me for the position, but I can imagine it'd be an intimidating interview for some reason.
You know, it was a little. Obviously, he's iconic with, you know, with Bass in the industry, and you know, I didn't know him personally. I had a relationship with Chuck, which made me feel good because I had an idea if I'd gotten this far in the process, Chuck wasn't saying I was a bad fit. You know, they're not going to fly me down. So I felt like, you know, there was a real opportunity. So I was kind of calm. It's funny, you talk about dream job. At the time, you know, we were owned by ESPN, and ESPN had and you may know, being the industry you're in, you know, your field. They had a thing called Dream Job, where they would actually have people that wanted to become on-air talent, and you know, they would do. It was kind of like a game show type.
Yeah,
it was kind of one of the original reality type things, I guess. You know, and so I was able, when I came down, I basically used that and said, you know, like the show on ESPN, this is like my dream job, and Bruce Mathis always told me after that was really a great line, and that may have been the one that put me over the top, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, you know, it's been an interesting run. I mean, it's you know, it's a great job. It really is. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You get to work with. There's not people that have more passion for anything in life than competitive bass anglers do to catch that next fish.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how, like, little things, and I find this in my own life, like little things that pop into your head that you almost want to write off. Like, no, I'm not going to compare this to the dream job thing or whatever, but you did. And that was the thing that really sold that person. And really, you know, I think in life that it's often that, you know what I mean? Taking that risk that pays off.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and my wife and my two boys, I got to thank them because, you know, we moved from Syracuse, New York to Montgomery, Alabama. And, you know, that's a big change. They lost all their friends. They had to go to new schools. You know, I honestly knew at the time that we were going to probably end up in Central Florida, which was good for me. I have family that live in Bradenton area, my mom and my sister. So there was kind of a plan, but they still took a leap of faith with me, and here we are 18 years later, and still going strong. Hopefully, maybe another 18.
I would think so. I mean, and if anything about the Opens that has happened the last number of years, the Opens have always been important, but it seems like it got a lot more important just simply because of everything that happened outside of the Opens and anglers, and then the immense demand for anglers to get to the Elite Series. That's what it feels like to me. Does it feel like that to you, or do they just feel the same?
Yeah, I think I definitely think the competition is more intense right now. It's always been great. I mean, it's always had locals and other tour pros and elite anglers, and you know, it's always had that, but it definitely seems like it's amped up and elevated a little bit. And I think a huge factor. And I got to give a big shout out to Hank Weldon and John Stewart for the job they've done with the college program. These college kids are darn good, and they, you know, they come to play. I mean, you look, we've got two former college champions that have qualified for the 2022, Jacob Faust and Cody Huff, and literally John Garrett could not have gotten any closer without
1 point. Was it?
Yeah. So I mean, that's you know, two in and a third that was right there. I mean, you couldn't get any closer. I mean, that just speaks volumes for the job that program is doing and building these anglers. And you know, those are just champions. And then you got Alex Redwine and John Kelly, who qualified out of the North. They both have college experience. So really, I guess you could say as many of the qualifiers have college experience that don't. And I think that's a great thing.
That really speaks volumes when you think of how few. I mean, how many college anglers has Bass sent to the Classic now? I'm going to go out on a limb and say maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah,
tops.
yeah. Since the college champ been going, yeah, it's probably about that.
So there's only 8 of them, and then there's only 13 qualifiers through the Opens every year.
It's 12, and then 1 through the nation.
Okay, so 12 qualifiers, and to have 2 of them. And there's, you know what I mean? That shows just how incredible that program. Why do you think it's so good? I mean, my thought process is it because the anglers get to fix, like in the Opens and in the elites, they have to make the mistake before they fix it. In other sports like football, whatever, you know, they have coaches that tell them how to fix things before they go wrong. I think that that's the big reason that those anglers are so prepared, because you can't get there anymore and be like, yeah, I just don't drop shot. I'm not a drop shot, or I'm not a whatever. Right. Because
I think your point about the coaches, probably there's something to do that, you know, something to say. If you look, you know, Bethel and Brian have, you know, they definitely
powerhouses.
Yeah. And they have great coaches that really, you know, work hard at their, you know, with their anglers and honing in their skills. And I'm not trying to discount all the other coaches, but and I'm sure there's a lot that do a great job, and you know, and maybe they get maybe because of their pedigree, so to speak, they get maybe a little bit more advanced angler coming in too. So they may have a slight, you know, kind of like the Duke basketball deal, you know. I mean, Coach K, you know, he's not. I mean, he's a great coach, but he's not necessarily developing the talent. The talent's already there. He's just kind of honing it in a little bit. So maybe there's some of that. But I just think, you know, getting the experience in bigger tournaments with larger number of anglers, you know, through the Black Bass platforms, and then moving up into the Opens, I think they're really ready. I mean, that's the one thing we really try to do at Bass. I mean, some of the rules will change here and there, but really, you know, from the takeoff to the weigh-in, you know, there may be a few more banners flying at the Elite Series, and, you know, we've got the great Dave Mercer there doing the emceeing. But, you know, overall, the basic structure of the event is very consistent along all the platforms. And what I like to think by doing that is when an angler has enough to adjust for when they move from, you know, higher levels of competition, we can take that element, make that seem very seamless for them, for those anglers, you know, that's a good thing. It's one less thing for them to have to worry about. They're familiar with lining up in single file, having their navigational lights on, the live wells open, and going through that takeoff process that they've been doing since, you know, they've been in high school, you know, if they fished the junior and high school program. So
yeah, it's really, when you see it, and I feel like we're seeing it pay off in a big way on the elites. When you see them come and all of us, you know, it used to be somebody you have to fish a few years before you even really heard of them. And now, you know, it's amazing the anglers that are their presence is felt as soon as they come on the Elite Series. It definitely does seem like anglers are getting much more prepared and are ready for it. In the past, I feel like they had to grow into it.
Yeah. No, I agree. The development they're getting at the high school through college level to prepare them for fishing the Opens is really great. And I think that's probably, as far as the anglers, that's the biggest change that I've seen over the years, because obviously we didn't have those programs back when I started.
Yeah. One thing, did you agree with those programs when they first started? Just curious, because I've openly said that I told Jerry it was crazy.
I was never a naysayer on those. I think they were super important, and I think they're important not only for our sport to continue to feed into it, but I think it's important for our sponsors and all the Bass supporters to know, you know, that we're grooming a next group to come in and be their customers. I mean, that's what it's about for them.
Well, and it's smart for us too as a business. If you look at it, I mean, you want to have the best prepared pros possible. And
100%.
If you look at what happened the last number of years, I can honestly say that it probably couldn't have happened at a better time in our sport.
Yeah,
Just because the group that came in was that prepared and that ready. Speaking of prepared and ready, I'm going to get asked this in the next few months. Every once in a while, they like to throw this at a guy like me on Bass Live, and they say, who's going to be our rookie of the year next year in the elites? So I figured, who better than the guy that watched them make the elites? And I know you guys don't like to pick one because that's going to besmirch the others. So I'll let you pick a. Give me.
I know who's not. Mike Ikanelli, if he fishes, of course. I think his winnings probably are over the threshold, right?
He will not be in the rookie of the year race. That would be so
Josh
awesome.
Douglas. I mean, I got to guess Josh is probably over the threshold. We need to look at that. I don't think we have since he qualified. Probably somebody has at Bass. It's $500,000 in combined Bass.
Earnings.
Yeah, the Major League Fishing.
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I mean, Josh is a seasoned vet, so I mean, if he's able to be part of that, he's a real threat. I'm looking. I'm cheating, and he's the Japanese guys. I mean, I've heard a lot about Daisuke Aoki from Sego, who
Yeah.
And he says that he is probably the premier angler in the Japanese market right now. So that's great to have him involved with the Elite Series. I guess he's won several of the Japanese classics and a lot of success. And clearly, I mean, from the season he had here fishing all 9 opens, I mean, he's ready to compete. But if I'm just going to pick one, I don't know. Cody Hoff, he's strong too. I don't know. He's had some major wins though. He might be over the threshold too, but probably not. I think Cody Hoff, if he's eligible, would be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing watching him and Fouts actually, both of them. Man, you want to talk about, they got a great opportunity to go to the Classic as a collegiate angler. And man, as soon as they went to the Opens, their presence has been felt in a big way. I mean, they really, it is amazing to me to watch that happen. When you see somebody like a Josh Douglas make the elites and how many years he's been working for it and how close he's come, that's got to feel a special feeling for you or no, they're all the same.
Heck yeah. I mean, Josh and I go way back. I mean, he is one of the best guys out there, and he has been such a good Bass supporter over the years, and just trying hard. And he's been so close so many times. That's why I know a guy. That's why I'm comfortable, not only because of his tour level experience, but because he's had so many successful years. I mean, that's why I always worry about the qualifier that's, maybe tried a few times and had those kind of 50s and less, and lower in the Angler of the Year. And then they have a couple of good events and then they qualify and you're kind of like, is this person really ready to hit the Elite Series? And you never know, I mean, some I've had questions about have come in and done absolutely fine. And others, it's like, I'm not all that surprised. It's unfortunate. So I do try to tell. I remember an angler that was lead angler, Randall Tharp. He qualified three times before he actually took it, because and he told me one time, he said, I just really wanted to know before I made that financial commitment. He said, I didn't want to just qualify one time and then think I'm all that. At the time, Randall was pretty well known. He was starting to establish himself on the FLW tour, but he wasn't the Randall Tharp that we know today. And he waited till and sometimes I do encourage anglers to, at least qualify twice or get close. If you're close once, that next 2 or 3, 4 out, and then you qualify, you're probably ready. If, again, like I said earlier, if you're, in the 50s and below for 3 years and then you qualify, you may want to step back. I know it's so hard to qualify. That's the problem right there. Is you may be that 3rd or 4th out for another 5 years if you don't take advantage of that opportunity. So I get both sides of it, but I do like to see an angler have some consistency over several years to really feel good that they're ready.
One angler that I'm pretty sure is ready, and we're all wondering what he's going to do. And you mentioned him, Mike Ikanelli. When will we find out? I mean, rather than watching every one of his reveal specials that he has leading up to the actual reveal, I think he's going to have a reveal special to reveal the date of the reveal special. What date does Mike Ikanelli? When will we know for sure whether Ikanelli's come back to the Elite Series or not?
So November 9th, all the qualifiers from the elites as well as the opens have to get their $5,000 deposit in. So, in theory, we should know November 10th, I guess. I guess he could wait till maybe he'll do some kind of like 12 or 11:59 a.m. He'll go to the mailbox with a check in an envelope with Bass and drop it in. I don't know. Or maybe he'll do like wear a hat and, something. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, give it, Mike's fantastic. I mean, He is a marketing genius. And the day he qualified through the Northern Opens, I said, well, this is going to be a lot of opportunity for Mike Ikanelli to take advantage of this qualification. And, I certainly hope that he does come back. I know he's got a lot of irons in the fire, and he's very successful at whatever he does. He doesn't necessarily need to do this, but I do know that he is a ultra competitive, and that may be the driving force that gets him to come back. I hope he does, but I wouldn't blame him if he didn't. It's a grind. He's got a family at home, and Vegas is getting more involved in tournament fishing. I know he wants to be around and probably see some of that. So whatever he ends up doing, all the best for Mike, but I'd love to see him back on, talking to you on the elite stage. I would.
What does your gut tell you? You think he's coming back?
I think if I had a place a bet, if you forced me
right now,
and I'm not a betting guy, I just spent a week a block away from a casino in Oklahoma. I didn't even go over there. I'm just not a betting. I can't remember last time I placed a bet, but if you forced me to put down a bet, I would bet that he comes back.
We'll have to see. Okay.
And no inside information. I just know how competitive he is.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. Like, there's part of me that could totally see him coming back. Then there's another part of me that's like, if his show's successful and his kids are at the worst age to leave, like every dad will tell you, like it would have been a lot easier to leave him the last 5 years than it would be right now. Now's when they cry when you leave.
Those are the X factors that probably, in Mike's mind, he's a competitor, so I know he wants to probably do it, but he has to look at the bigger picture. He's got a lot going on, and I think if his show is picked back up and things like that will be big influences in his decision.
With the qualifying we've talked about the qualifying for the Elite Series, and the new schedule is out now for next year, so we know what we're looking ahead of for next year. Do you foresee any changes in qualifying? I do hear a lot of anglers that throw out that it should be all 9. Some people would say, it should be. Do you think any of that'll ever change?
I think right now we're really kind of diving down on it, and it's pretty much there. But I don't think you'll see a lot of changes from 2021, other than one thing, and it probably needed to be done before. But I believe it will be done for 2022. And we have, double qualification. For example, Porosnik ended up double qualifying through the overall in the Centrals. And we moved another spot down the Centrals list. And we had committed to that. And we actually did that in 2020 as well. So we were consistent with 2020 and 2021. But now looking back at it, listening to some feedback from some of the anglers and really agreeing with them, I think the double qualifiers will now, the extra spot will come from the overall list versus.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, to me, it makes more sense because they fish 9. You know what I mean? You've got a better test study to go if you're successful in 3 versus 9. But I mean, all those decisions. I'm lucky.
Well, it's hard. You got to balance it.
I just walk away and let smart people like you decide.
well, you got to balance it. I mean, you can argue it a lot of ways. I certainly from a readiness and financial, output. Certainly the overall. But a lot of anglers, especially if they're fishing other tournament trails that want to come fish bass elites, they have, their schedules are so tight. It's awful hard for them to fish all 9. So we've talked about maybe adjusting some of the numbers and things like that. And, it's working pretty well as far as the field sizes and things like that. But I do believe we've done the right thing with changing the double qualification system and moving to the overall versus the individual division.
One thing I don't think people talk about enough, and it amazes me, when you look at what Hackney and Christie did last year, Porosnik this year, any of these anglers, Ikanelli, that literally, just come back in and with one. I mean, Porosnik didn't do it the first year. It took him 2 years, but he came close to doing it the first year.
Yeah, and don't forget last year he didn't fish the first event too. So he was that close without. Yeah, he did not fish. It was Kissimmee chain in 2019. 2020. He did not. Yeah, sorry.
It all runs together. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. In 2020, he didn't fish that first event, so he almost did it on 7 events.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but to your point, I know where you're going, Dave, and I agree 100%, because I think anyone who thinks if they see kind of a high tour pro that's maybe fishing a different league that wants to come back in, and they see him, sign up for the opens, and to say that, oh, he's going to be back. The fact that these guys did it is A, it shows how good they were or are. And B, it shows that they really, avoided any kind of a major hiccup, like a breakdown or a complete disaster tournament. Yes, you control your own fate to an extent in this sport, but not really. I mean, we all, they're all getting into a boat powered by an outboard motor. We all know it's part of tournament fishing. If you've been around it, those things can go bad. Bad things can happen no matter if you have the best equipment, the newest equipment. I've seen boats first tournament of the year blow a power head. They've never been run before. They're brand new. It just happens. It's kind of out of the angler's control to some extent. Although I have noticed that these guys, they understand that they gotta take care of their equipment, how they run and tournament days. I think sometimes some of these guys that don't really have full understanding, they go out there, 5-foot waves and try to run 75 miles an hour. These guys, they understand if I can't get there and get back in one piece, it doesn't matter how fast I get there, right? So they'll take care. And you spent a lot of time up on the Great Lakes and some of the best, I'm sure Joe Baylog. That guy, he can go out in 10-foot waves and he'll go out and he'll come back. And if you watch him run, he's not running 70 miles an hour. He just knows exactly the right speed to protect his equipment, take care of it, avoid those mechanical issues. So you can do some of that, but some of it just happens. It's just unavoidable. It's just mechanical failure.
Yeah.
And you got to avoid that. You really do. You got to avoid that. You cannot have, one of those you can't really have those triple digit finishes. Certainly if you're fishing one division, you can't. If you're fishing the full 9, maybe you could have 1, 2, it's a disaster. You have 2 100, sub 100s, you're done probably.
Well, when you hear somebody like Greg Hackney, somebody who's accomplished much as he has, and says, this is the hardest thing I've ever accomplished in the sport. I laid it on the line. You know what I mean? And to him, failure wasn't even an option. To hear him say that is pretty amazing. But speaking of amazing, you have some records, Chris. Do you hold the record for the most ties?
Don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
You're not allowed to talk about that? Season's over.
I guess you can because the season's over. We have a rule. We never talk about that on site at a tournament. I have had 4. I actually had 2 in one year. Most of them involved an elite angler too, which is an elite angler at the time anyway. So yeah, it is kind of I don't know if it's good or bad or what, but unfortunately, all my ties have happened either in the fall or in the early part of the season.
Yeah.
we had one at Toho, few Super Bowl Sunday. Actually, we had to have a fish off. So I've never been able to do the like, okay, let's go back out and first fish, because it's dark a lot of times, or too close to dark to go back out. So I've always had to roll into Sunday. So you call the airline, you call the hotel, usually every time we've gotten what's called our backup scales. It's a little, more like a club type scales that probably a lot of bass clubs around the country use. Pull those out of the trailer, you send the crew, myself and Danette, who I think has been with me for every tie. So
she needs to get some of this too.
So it's one of
Everybody
us.
blames you, but
it's one of us. We got to wait and see when one of us isn't there, then we'll finally know who the real culprit is. But they're you're always looking forward to putting an end of the tournament, getting home and all that. So from that aspect, it's kind of like, oh no, tie, and that's kind of why we don't talk about it. You got to do all these changing that I mentioned earlier. But there is kind of a cool aspect of it, to think that anglers fish 3 days, 5 fish a day, and then it comes down to a tie. It's just like, it just goes to show how incredibly close, how one little call here or there, can make a difference. So it's cool. It's got its good and bads, I guess.
Do you think Trip Weldon is secretly jealous of all your ties?
He is 100% jealous, because he talks about it all the time. I was really hoping, as Trip was kind of winding down his wonderful career, and really, I mean, he's been such a great mentor and a great friend to me. I really pleaded that he would get a tie before his last fish was weighed. Even the Classic, I was like, man, how great would that be? He was the ceremonial weighmaster, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, at the Classic at Fort Worth. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be great if we could have a tie and send Trip out, at the Classic with a tie? I mean, but it didn't happen. I'm sure Hank Cherry's fine with that.
Yeah, I'm sure Hank's fine with that. And you know what? I will say, and I don't think I've ever talked about this, but one of the coolest things in my career was watching Trip be the honorary weighmaster at that event, just because, and I never thought about it before I watched it. You just think, oh, Trip's going to come back. Oh, that's cool. Well, Trip will be back on stage. But for the first time in my career, I got to see Trip without the stress of like, this guy's got to protest against this guy, or all the boats back, or all. I mean, he was just enjoying himself, and it was all about, the anglers and him and having a good time. And really, it was cool, really cool to see.
No, 100%. Of course, at the Classics, I'm usually backstage, so I don't get to see it other than through a little monitor. But I was able to it was almost cooler to experience the sound aspect of it, because I mean, the cheers he got and the support he got from the fans. I mean, sometimes tournament directors in general are kind of like the evil, you know what I mean? Like, everybody thinks they're the kind of, not the bad guy. That's maybe not, but you know what I mean? Like,
the sheriff.
The sheriff. Exactly. So, you sometimes when you walk in a room, people start to chatter a little bit. You don't know if they're talking good or bad about you. And, everybody's got an opinion on everything you do, from weather delays to rulings on protests and things like that. But you're right. Trip was able to kind of just throw all that aside and just enjoy the moment. And what was really cool is the fans reacted as they should, and showed the appreciation for all the years that he put in on the stage. And with that, I mean, it's a stressful job. I mean, Dave, I mean, you've been around and you've seen Trip enough to know, I mean, you don't take decisions lightly, and it's stressful when weather, whether it be severe weather or fog, and you got 100-ish anglers, in some case 400 anglers, and they all have an opinion about what you're doing and how you could do it better and all of that. But you just try to do the best job you can. Trip always did. I mean, again, he was such a great mentor for me to have, and all of us in the tournament department, John Stewart, Hank, Lisa, all of us, to have that type of role model to follow and kind of take their lead was great. So I was glad to see him get that, and I'm sure. I mean, Trip, people probably know, but maybe don't. He's a huge fan of the sport too.
Oh,
so he'll be around. You will see Trip Weldon at tournaments. I almost guarantee it. And he'll be able to enjoy it. And he'll probably, tell us how we can do something maybe a little better, which is fine. But no, it's he will be around. I mean, he's a huge fan, and a lot of people know, but maybe not all the people watching this podcast is Tripp is a heck of an angler tournament.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, he is renowned around Alabama, certainly. And he actually finished second in an old invitational back in the day on Lake Martin. And I always give old Pete Gluzik a hard time because Pete beat him. And, but yeah, no, Pete's a great guy. But yeah. I mean, Tripp's got a great tournament fishing history as well.
Yeah, things might have went better for Ikanelli in the Elite Series if Pete didn't beat Tripp Weldon in that invitational back in the
funny.
day.
My first classic, just kind of, I don't want to bore you with too much, but my first classic was Charlotte, North Carolina, where Talk won. And I was out at the lake at the time helping load up the boats and get them ready to head to Charlotte. I forget the name of the arena at the time. We were on Lake Wiley, and I'm sitting there, and Gene Gillen and conservation was summer tournament, so they were putting ice in the. We had and anglers would pull up next to this ice box, and conservation directors put ice, and I'm just sitting there kind of watching and helping. And it's my first classic. I'm in awe, and I get a call, and I think it was Tripp, and he said somebody just reported that Mike's fishing in off limits area, and I'm like, what? Yeah, the restaurant, and I literally turn around and look. And Mike's fishing 100 feet behind me at I forget the name of the restaurant there, which we had clearly told everyone was off limits because it's kind of a big release area and all that stuff. So we had to disqualify. So my first classic, I had a part in disqualifying Ikanelli. So I guess that's. But Mike and I get along great now.
Yeah, well, see how this whole qualifying for the class or qualifying for the elites works out. But do you think he did that on purpose? There's always been that. You saw his reaction when you went to DQ him.
Yeah. So I will say the restaurant, it was a weekend, I believe. Maybe it could have been the Friday, but I think it was the weekend because the restaurant was super crowded. There was a lot of people out there watching Mike and cheering him on. And am I going to say he did it on purpose? I don't know. Only Mike knows that, but he was taking advantage of having a nice little made crowd right there at the restaurant for sure. Whether he's just didn't realize or what, but that was kind of funny.
He is a master marketer. We'll never know. I'll ask him next time I have him on here. Last question. What kind of critters did you trap back in the day?
So my number one was squirrels. I did almost 1,000 squirrels in 1 year. And then second was raccoons. Raccoons were really big. I did 500 and something raccoons in 1 year.
Wow.
So I hated bats. Bats, I was not a big fan of getting bats.
Why?
I don't know. They sketch me out. I don't know. Yeah, you get in an attic and there's a couple hundred, it's low ceiling, crawl space attic, and there's a couple hundred bats up there. I just did not like that.
I've always heard that, and you tell me if this is right or wrong. I've always heard that beavers are the worst to trap because they don't try to run. They'll always try to attack you because they know they can't outrun you. Is that true, or is that just something Canadians make up?
Well, I didn't really do a lot of live. I did a lot of trapping of beavers, but not a lot of live trapping.
Oh, okay,
of beavers, so they weren't attacking me.
No, yeah, you took care of that issue.
Yes, that was not a problem.
What is more rabid, an angry tournament angler or an angry beaver?
Angry beaver? Isn't that a TV show or something?
Should be.
Beavers? I think it is.
Should have been the name of this podcast.
Even for the Canadian to bring in a beaver question. Jeez.
You've been listening to the Angry Beaver, and I thank you very much, Chris Bose. You do an awesome job. And the reason that those calls are so tough for people like yourself and Tripp and all the tournament directors to make is because you guys care as much as you do. You're a great team.
Yeah, we do. They do. They do a great job. We love the bass anglers, and I appreciate you, Dave, and giving me this opportunity.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon. But he's going into hibernation now, like the Beavers. Open season's done until when do they got to have their entries in by for the Opens?
November 9th.
Everything's November.
The Opens. Oh, the Opens.
When does that
start? November 9th.
Everything's November 9th.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
November 9th's a big week.
Yeah. The whole schedule, go to bassmaster.com/opens and the schedule, the registration schedule. I'm actually putting up payout. It's going to be the same as 2021. So there's really no change there. I'm putting the payout, some information, the fact sheet, which the only change is really what I talked to you about as far as those qualifications, just, making that slight change where duplications from the overall. So there'll be more info coming up in the next coming few days.
Very cool. You're always working to make the sport better. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Where else do you find out stuff like Chris Bowes was once a trapper? That's right. Most likely nowhere else other than this podcast. But we appreciate you listening week after week, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, because Bob Cobb of the Bassmaster told you to. You hear?